If RENNSPORT feels twitchy, nervous, or like you're constantly fighting the steering on a controller, the problem may not be the car. It may be your controller settings. I'm running RENNSPORT on a PS5 with a DualSense controller, and this is the setup that I've landed on as a strong starting point, especially for something like the BMW M4 GT3. I'm going to give you the exact numbers, explain the few settings that really matter, and then show you what to change if the car still doesn't feel right. Let's get started with the complete setup. For steering, I'm using Exponent of 1.9, left and right dead zones of 0 to 0.02. We'll get into that. Smoothing at 0.15, speed sensitive smoothing at 0.20, speed sensitive steering at 0.55, counter steering at 0.10, gamepad steering range at zero point 0.9, secondary gamepad steering range at 1.0. And don't worry if it looks like a lot of information. There's really only three values that we're going to pay close attention to later. First, let's look at Exponent, which is at 1.9. This changes how the steering input is distributed across the movement of the stick. And for a controller, that's important because we have very little physical steering travel compared with a wheel. So at 1.9, the center of the stick gives us a much finer control. Small movements stay small, but as we move farther toward full stick, the steering becomes progressively stronger. And that gives me precision through fast corners without completely sacrificing steering lock in the slower corners. Next is smoothing at 0.15. Smoothing helps remove those sudden little controller movements that can make the car nervous, but you don't want too much. If smoothing is too high, the steering starts feeling delayed, especially through quick direction changes. At 0.15, I'm getting enough filtering to calm the BMW down without making it feel disconnected. Then I've got speed sensitive smoothing at 0.20. That gives us a little more stability when the speeds start climbing. Speed sensitive steering is set to 0.55. This is one of the settings that really helps make RENNSPORT manageable on a controller. At higher speeds, we don't want full stick movement instantly producing massive steering angles. The faster the car goes, the more controlled we want those inputs to become. At lower speeds, we still need enough steering to attack slower corners. This setting helps balance those two situations. But probably the most important change I've made is the primary gamepad steering range at 0.90. This helps stop me from automatically using too much steering, and that's incredibly easy to do with the thumbstick. Push the stick all the way over, and you can ask the front tires for more steering than they can actually use. The result: understeer, tire scrub, and usually a lot of unnecessary tire squeal. Limiting the primary range slightly to 0.90 helps keep the steering in a more usable area. But I've left the secondary steering range at 1.0, so I can still access full steering lock when I actually need it, for hairpin spins or maneuvering around the pits. And I set a button on the controller to switch between those two steering ranges that lets me use the 0.90 range for normal driving, then switch to 1.0 secondary range whenever I need that extra steering lock. Countersteering is only at 0.10. I don't want the game driving the car for me. I just want a tiny bit of help when the rear of the BMW starts moving around. And at 0.10, it's subtle. If you want complete manual control, set this to 0. Now, don't completely rebuild the setup if something doesn't feel right. Make small changes based on the actual problem. If the car is still twitchy through fast corners, increase speed sensitive smoothing from 0.20 to 0.25. If it feels too slow through chicanes, reduce regular smoothing from 0.15 to 0.12. And if the front tires are constantly screaming through corners, reduce steering range from 0.90 to 0.85. If you're struggling to make tight hairpins, try 0.95 or use the secondary steering range. And if you've got stick drift, increase the dead zone from 0.02 to somewhere between 0.03 and 0.05. Otherwise, leave it as low as possible. If you just want somewhere to start, copy these numbers exactly. But the three settings I'd focus on first are Exponent at 1.9, smoothing at 0.15, and Gamepad Steering Range at 0.90. Those three settings have the biggest effect on making the controller feel precise without making the BMW nervous. Then drive the car. Don't immediately start changing everything. Run some laps, identify the actual problem, and make one adjustment at a time because the goal isn't to make the controller feel insanely fast. It's to make the car predictable. And once it's predictable, then we can make it fast. And that's my starting controller setup for RENNSPORT on a PS5. I'm using it primarily with the BMW M4 GT3, but it's a great baseline to start testing other cars as well. And if you're still struggling with the controller, let me know exactly what the car is doing in the comments. Understeer, oversteer, twitchy steering, whatever it is, because that's what we should fix next. And I'll see you on the track.